Good evening. Welcome to Investigator News, and I'm Ellie, and we got William here tonight for the discussion. Boy, what happened to my comments? My comments disappeared. Uh, anyway, tonight, boy, I got a last minute message from Eva, so I'm gonna have to be very careful because there's certain things that I cannot say with um, Ukraine and Russia and the war going on. So I'm going to have to be very careful with it. But I was very interested to see what all she had to say that was going on over there. And we've heard about a stalemate that's been happening over there between the two. And she did affirm that there is basically they're getting nowhere. They get ahead a little bit on one side and then they pull it back to the other side. So there is a stalemate. And she says it's almost equivalent to what they seen in 2015. So this is very interesting because even Ukraine is claiming this. And now the thing that's different right now that she says is civilians to protect their communities are bringing up arms again. And she said this hasn't been done since 2014. And um, they said just protect their houses, and they don't have nothing but like a school, a clinic, uh, and some stores, a gas station. It's a very small community, and they seem to have hit them pretty hard. And so they decided to pull up arms and to protect their houses. And they said they're not military. They're using like shotguns and stuff they hunt with and to get some of the wildlife there to be able to get meat and sustain themselves. So this is a very far out little community. And they tend to have taken over. But when she said basically when the troops had come in, they were able to push them back, the whole community. There was more in the city, the tiny little, she said it's not a city, it's a community. And they were able to push them back out. So she said this is going on a lot in Donbass and Luhansk, a little bit over in Odessa. And she says she fears for the people that are over there that at one time lived in um, Mariupol. Now, as far as Mariupol goes, they did surrender it up to the Russians. This is with Red State News. Also, it's being reported on all the news stations. And she gave me a small report for Mariupol, and she said that the Russians did take. She said she thought maybe 100, but she doesn't know what's being reported in the West. That they did take them hostages, but there were um, her people, some Russians that were there too. They were able to rescue them, and then they took these Ukrainian soldiers hostage. That's been shown on the mainstream media. Um, she, the thing is, um, she said in another little town over in Lunks, they managed to hit their hospital. She said, but this is war, and these people know. And she said, but see, the same place had been hit in 2014, and then again in 2015. So she goes, it's not to worry because they don't just use those clinics as um, for their set clinic hospitals. They tend to so used to war that like both sides, they just move it to another place. When it looks like they don't have sirens there, but they know when the military is getting close. So what they do is they empty out this. She says it's like a house, a very very small place, and then they go in and they gather it up and they just move it to another. So it's the same on both sides, she said. You know, they're shooting over and they're hitting civilians, and of course, everyone is sad, she said. And then Ukraine does the same thing. It's back and forth, back and forth. But she said they are at a standstill. And she said, I believe it's going to stay this way for quite a long time. She says, we've been at a standstill since 2010, 2013. It was got fierce in 2014 and 15, but it then went to another a standstill and a stall. So she did say there's a lot of atrocities, and that she hopes that there will be some justice for the atrocities that are being done. Um, and both sides, both sides. She says, but she's agreeing with me and William. This is war. People are going to get hurt. It's just the way they go about it sometimes, because they do fire from residential areas, and this has been done in Israel, and even Israeli news and quite a few others do report that this happens. So she says that seems to be something that Ukraine is doing, and that they have to be very careful where they go to for rescues. As far as the trains, they said that, it seems that military equipment is still being moved, and that over down in Mariupol, since they got it, they are making a lot of changes in the ports, and Russia is very I'm trying to think of the word she put in, very aggressive in bringing in and getting it set up for what the military is doing. She said there's even maybe some, the report she got from one of the other ladies, Nancy, they're no longer in Kyiv, they're down towards Crimea. Like I said, these people travel all over the place, and that Crimea is sending some of the ships of the Russian ports there over to Mariupol. So she says that basically the cities that are Russians, just purely Russians, there's no Ukrainians there, nor have there ever been any Ukrainians living there. She said are now pretty much set, and have got she says it's not really a military line, it's more of a defense line that's being held off by the people. And on the other side is the military. So she says it's not like they're wanting to just storm over and kill the people in these small communities. They're kind of stand off right now and just watching. So that she says that's a good thing, because really they ought to respect the people that are caught up in this war and not hit civilians. And it has been done since February, and lots of mass graves. But she wanted to reiterate, and oh boy, that the 9,000 graves is from 2008. They're showing stuff on the media. She said that, let them bury their Russians in peace, and they'll, they're not messing with Ukraine people to bury theirs, and that it's just very sad on both sides, because they were friends. She said, and it's not the people that are the hostiles. It's actually the army, okay? And she says, so it's very disheartening that she watches her friends put their hands over their face and say, oh my gosh, they're going to go after my friends again. This is so folks, this is so hard. And I'll even have William kind of reiterate on or say something on this. I mean, think of if you were in, let's say, here in Arkansas, and you had friends up in Missouri or down in Louisiana, and all of a sudden you have a military that comes in and says, okay, we're gonna protect you guys, and we're gonna kill everybody over there. This is what she says. And she said, so it's very hard for the people to grasp the war that's happening. And when they bring in these military equipment and tanks that shoot over there, that the people are in horror on both sides. And they just want their country back. They want the Russians to be able to have their Russian states and have their homes and their farms. And same goes with on Ukraine side. You know, they want their land, they want their houses. So it's good to see that the people haven't turned against one another like before, because before they had at the line of the Russian line. So what I'm talking about, folks, this is going into Ukraine and these cities where it is basically Russians, all these cities, and there are no Ukrainians that's ever lived there. So that's what they're protecting is, and she says, and maybe through some negotiations that they're able to stay there. And she said not only that, but people are coming up from Crimea once again and moving back into their housing here because they know that it is protected. So that's pretty much what she told me. But she said, believe the media when there is a stalemate. There's nobody going either way. No one's going back and getting more troops or more equipment. It's kind of like what she goes, it's like, what do we do now? You know, you're not going to give up. We're not going to give up. And we can't get either way. William, have you ever heard of anything like this where it's just at a standstill?
Yeah, World War One and the trenches came to a standstill. They call it a war of attrition, or now they call it trench warfare. They all got their own bunkers. They all have like bunker houses. They move their things to back and forth. Yeah.
You know, the thing is, you know, I asked her, what is there trenches out there? And she said, yes, they are. And I thought, wow, you know, because of you talking about World War One, and I'll have you get in a little bit more on that. And she said a lot of what the people are using, because you know, this is her report. She said she wants people to know about the people that are in the war this time, and I agree. And she said a lot of what they're using she said the people are in their 50s, 60s, 40s, 50s, 60s. The kids don't want to be in the little towns. They want to be in Kiev or somewhere fun, Mariupol, you know. So these are older folks that just want to live their lives. And there are trenches, and there are they have got an old World War II tank that they have managed to get to work. And they're protecting themselves with it. She says it took them a long time to figure it out, but it's getting done. So this is interesting. And I think everybody should know that there's people. You know, sometimes all we hear is the war and the tanks and the planes and the bombings and the missiles, and we never get to hear about the people, of how it affects them and what's going on. Now, we do in Israel with Palestinians sometimes. And she did mention Israel in her report, that it's a lot like that, you know, where you got an army that puts missiles or launchers or a tank just to get a better angle or a better strike zone, just in the wrong places. And then they don't think, or maybe they do know, that there's going to be something coming back. And unfortunately, it's in the wrong areas. So, and then she said it does happen on both sides, though. But the amount of casualties is tremendous, and it's on both sides. It's on both sides. She says it's about a little bit more on the Ukraine side than it is on the Russian side until they started getting all the equipment from the United States. then they started getting a hand on what's going on there. So go ahead, William, with the trenches, and maybe you can add a little bit more to this.
So the reason they use trenches is because when people are shooting with guns they're very fast bullets, okay? So their trajectory's pretty flat. And when you're in a trench, that projectiles just hits the ground, you know, it could be behind you, it could be just in front of you, but it can't hit you as long as you stay down in the trench below the ground level. And they'll make sights in the trench. So when they pile up the dirt on one side, they'll put a little V in it, then they'll go down the trench farther and put another V so they can see the enemy. And that can go on for miles. And that way, when they put their snipers out or they want to field their troops, then everybody has a firing position. And if you have enough of them, you send out snipers, then if the sniper never does anything in a routine, then they're not going to be targeted, and they're likely to be successful. So, yeah, and also if there's a blast nearby, like from a tank or from a bomber or from a howitzer, that blast is going to go out sideways, and the blast shockwave is going to go out sideways. But being in the trench keeps you from being hit directly by the shockwave. You get the echo of it, but you don't get the full shockwave, and it keeps you alive. Trench is the best body armor there is.
Yeah. They have found what?
I'd also like to talk about the port that our fine friends over there in Russia are taking all the port they have control of. They're taking all the wheat stores, putting them on ships and shipping them out to their holdings. And so a lot of the grain that Ukraine has stored up in the past it's being taken.
Yeah. So I want to go over to the Indo-Pacific because there's a lot of the Philippines is speaking out. Not only that, like Taiwan, Australia, and it's because the Chinese regime is more aggressive in the waters now, and in the Indo-Pacific. And they say this area is very crucial, not to America, but to the world of everything going on. And it has affected China and how they are reacting to what's going on over in Ukraine. And so what happens if the Indo-Pacific is no longer free? Now, they're basically, the U.S. seems to have lost their sight of the ball, according to Jinping. And the South Sea waterways, they can make trillions of dollars in trade if and it has been taken for granted by they say the U.S. But what happens if those waterways are no longer free? And that was a question put at Jinping, and he was laughing about it. And he was saying that these sanctions that Biden has on him are laughable. And he also mentioned that now that it seems to be a weekend, that and they can start making changes and demands. Well, what God, after I read this article, before I go on any further, guys, with this, today Biden decided he's going to lift all the sanctions off of China. Um, oh boy. And everybody's warning against it. Everybody says, don't do it. There's one of the last few sanctions that were put in place. And if they do that, it's a good possibility that China will take over the trade, the whole trade. Um, not just the waterways, but I mean they will be able to control products coming from China and to the rest of the world. And so moving on with this, the Chinese, um, it's no longer free, and you have a dynamic there where you can't move without the Chinese permission. And this is in the middle of the kingdom, and China is trying um, to get the Chinese Communist Party to recreate a vision of Chinese past, where all the major decisions refer back to the capital, or basically to the imperial seat. That's so Cleo Pascal, the senior fellow with the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, he is now says there's a lot to be worried about with this. There's a lot of money that's involved with the White House. He said a two-way trade between the United States and the Indo-Pacific totaled about $1.75 trillion, and they've been getting that since 2020. And it supports more than 5 million jobs in the region of China. The Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, notes that Indo-Pacific destiny is nearly one-third of the U.S. exports. I tell everybody, farmers and that, or people that say, it's if we grow stuff here, it shouldn't be sent over there. Well, that's the issue. We grow stuff and it goes to other countries. And so now what it's done, and all of everything that we have pushed to out of our own country under Obama administration was pushed to Mexico, if you remember, to Canada and to China, but they didn't tell us that. So not all the players really want to play by the rules. And this has made aggression very uh, the aggression has grown over there in the Indo-Pacific, because now everybody's really realizing that uh, that basically every time the United States drops one of their sanctions, uh, night, Ed, you're leaving kind of soon. Um, um, yeah, so the trade that we have that's going on with China right now, the resources. Not only that, but Myanmar and Indonesia and Papua New Guinea and the Solomon Islands, as well as the other islands. I had someone say, no, they didn't take Papua New Guinea. Yes, they have. It just hasn't. It's not in the news. It's not in the mainstream news. So they have got the Solomon Islands, they got Papua New Guinea, and now it's happening in Myanmar, in Indonesia. They're also looking, William reminded me earlier that, there's been a change in the Philippines, and this could mean the Philippines might work agreements out with China also. So we're slowly seeing the Indo-Pacific head to China. And, as we reported in the past, um, um, that the Chinese regime has been wanting, me and William talked about this earlier, and they just want the beaches to put their stuff on. They want military equipment on this. The problem is, now in history books, the Japanese sought control of the Solomon Islands in World War II, if you didn't know this. And the scene of enormous amounts of hard fighting by the U.S. Marines going to the island, hoping they could stop what was going on in the battle. I think it's the Battle of Coral, the Coral Sea.
Coral Sea.
Yes. And The war in the Pacific War was World War II, leading up to the Battle of Midway. And I'm hoping I'm getting this right, William. So, this is kind of what they're talking about. They say the leaders and a lot of the intel and a lot of this is coming from Taiwan and Japan. And what they're saying, it feels like it's going back to World War II, but instead it's China, and China is now hopping island. I call them island, but it's country to country to country, and all them little islands in the Indo-Pacific, and they're trying to work deals with them, just for that little piece. America can be here too, but we're going to be here. And this is what they've been doing. Why they say we're weak and our backs are turned, and we're only worried about the Ukraine war, and so Jinping has been saying not only is he get this, William, he's looking for ports for trade, and he wants to take over all the way to India. And if he does this with the loosened sanctions with the U.S., the rest of the world is kind of worried that it will be not just a third of the world being controlled by China, it'll be almost 50%. And it will take down third world nations. And not only that, but they said it could even hurt the production in the United States. So, William, what do you want to add anything to this?
Yeah. So the Philippines just elected a brand new president. Of course, the Solomon Islands a few months ago did. Japan has a new prime minister. Trying to think of who else has a new prime minister. Anyway, so there's a lot of changes or discontinuing of how the country works. And while there's that turmoil within the country of trying to get a hold on what this new government's going to be like, they move in their spies that seem to be exactly like their countries. And they start looking for opportunities to bring in business. And then once they get some business started and some trade, then they offer to do some roads and stuff like that. It's a step-by-step. If there's an island, they want to put their feet on it. And it's called unrestricted warfare. And if the United States doesn't negotiate with these countries first and set up ports where we can stockpile provisions for our Navy, then our Navy's supply chain could end up going all the way back to Hawaii, all the way back to, Alaska or San Francisco. Anyway, you don't want the supply chains to be really long when you're involved in a heavy war, because you'll deplete all your weapons magazines in the ships real quick. It's surprising how fast it happens. And then they need to resupply. Well, they only have a couple options. One is to already have a boat coming their way with supplies so they can resupply at sea, or have a port where they already have logistics set up. And one thing that's even better about the port logistics set up is they can have a second crew for the boat, so the sailors don't have to stay on the boats for until the end of the war. Yeah. They might be out for 6 months and then rotate.
Now get this, what they're seeing on the islands is, they say, an expansion primarily maritime. And they said you could see that they're building up the Navy. The PLA Navy is expanding at a rate that they've never seen before over there in um, these waters. And they said it's expanding at a rate they've never seen, and this is peacetime, they claim. And they said they're launching ships at a rate of 7 to 1 in comparison to the United States in the last 4 years. And they're going, they said, even from 2016 to 2020, they weren't really putting that many in the water. But now they can say that this is a massive amount of numbers. And they said there is more ships in the water than the entire Japanese surface fleet. So clearly China and the Navy's incredibly important. Um, and that um, this China dual civil fusion program, uh, they said if you're involved in this program, you're definitely seeing how it's getting very physical. Uh, uh, they say in the fishing ports, and they're seeing not civilian military or civilian ships coming out of Russia, but intel ships. They said there's a new intel ship uh, that they're using. It's like a spy ship, and I told you about that earlier. They had the spy ship that went down to Australia, and so they say that there's no longer really the great amount of Chinese fishing fleets. It's military fleets now. So they're getting very antsy. Um, they say that there's military members on all the ferries now that used to not be. So they say this is popping up all over Indonesia. So now that, like I mentioned, the military getting on the beaches, well, now they're starting to move around and control things a little bit. But they said on the flip side, they've been seeing alliances pop up. Australia, India, Japan, not so much from the United States, they said. And so Taiwan is pushing Washington that they might need to start moving aggressive ships, because China is getting very aggressive, not only in the Taiwan Strait, but along the Solomon Islands. Now, William, did you tell me something about the Solomon Islands earlier?
Yeah, how the Chinese moved into the Solomon Islands with that new president. The president made some deals, and he's corrupt as can be, and so he's basically sold the sovereignty of his country, part of their small nation, to China for 100 years, so they can put a port on it. That it's not going to have any of its nature left. It's just going to be turned into a stationary aircraft carrier.
The other thing they're seeing is the same type of fleets that are now starting to move in off the west coast of Africa. So that was something that was even different. Like we said, I believe last week, is, as they're moving around and trying to get military equipment in place, now they're moving around, being aggressive, and getting footholds of some of these beaches. And they said that this has caused a big concerns across the region, how China is behaving, and it's forcing a level almost to cause Australia and Japan to into a response. But they said that basically now Australia is going to have their elections, and they say China's just waiting on the edge to see what happens with this. Both of both that want to be in control really aren't for China, but I think one's weaker than the other, and so China's kind of waiting to see what goes on with this election, to whether or not that base that they have there, whether they could expand it or not. and they said they have bought and took over a lot of those mines over there. So if you guys are watching those gem shows or the gold shows, you're going to start seeing more Chinese showing up. And I know I've seen it. I've seen it. And that's what's going on. They're going in and they're buying things privately or anonymously, and they're starting to take over a lot of the gems, the gold that's they're finding over there in Australia. They said they're going to do the same thing in Africa if somebody doesn't step in and stop this. They said they're just going to quietly take over Taiwan, and this is what China says. They are able to quietly take over Taiwan if the United States doesn't start responding. So, William, do you think that we're not paying attention, or do you think that if we just notice them getting too aggressive, that we'll move a lot more over there again, our fleets?
So we have two problems. One is having places for all these fleets to be, because they have to get repaired and whatnot. War is about logistics, and it's also about surprising the enemy. So that's all going on. And the threat to Taiwan, while we're involved in all this and trying to negotiate with these new governments for a place to park, our destroyers, like Vietnam, Hanoi, or Subic Bay in the Philippines. Those would be great bases to have where we can build up our logistics and repair capability, and a place for our troops to rest before they come back and have to, police the South China Sea. Now, what China's involved in is called soft. It's a soft invasion. It's a military invasion where you're invited in, or you take hold of the neighbors because you have a business there.
I really, William, I really think that China's just watching. I think they're going to get aggressive. That's their way. It's kind of like Iran. Iran can never just be nice. They just come at you like and want to scare everybody with we got nukes. We're making nukes. And China does it aggressively. It worked with. You remember the whale shows where they would chase the Chinese and Japanese away, and and they would come back at them aggressively, and they would even run their little boats over. That's kind of what I feel is going on, and that China is just being very aggressive and tempting somebody to do something. We're not hearing so much with Taiwan saying they're in fear. I've asked, I got a new source I was telling William about over in the Philippines now. And he was saying that Taiwan is really being kind of quiet, but they are building up the military and they are getting equipment, but he doesn't know where from. He thinks the U.S. Kind of like what's going on in Ukraine, where they're sending the military equipment and letting them get ready. Now, is war close? Jinping is basically saying this is up to the United States. They're going to slowly, like you said, soft takeover. That was mentioned. And they're going to do it that way to where it's just a force of getting in there and pushing Taiwan under control. And
not
then
just Taiwan, it's all the islands.
what?
It's not just Taiwan. There's they're investing in these small countries all over the South Pacific as a soft invasion of all the islands, of all the governments,
Mm-hmm.
not just Taiwan. They want the United States to leave so that when Taiwan's bleeding out, nobody will notice.
Yeah.
That's what they're talking about, the soft invasion.
Yeah. And so really Taiwan, I think they're doing kind of like China is, and why everything's quiet. They're just stocking up, or they're bringing all the equipment in and getting ready. Now, another thing is, I mentioned on one of the morning shows, is we have found out that China, in the middle of China, has now set up what looks like Taiwan, and they're practicing. But get this, now we got Iran uh, practicing on a fake Israel, and it was their own satellites that I don't know if you heard about this. This came out tonight that their Iran's own satellites took pictures, and they were I guess they didn't smudge them out or something, but this area was disclosed, and they seen what looks like um, um, Israel, kind of with a weird kind of port, and even one of the ships that they took. I'm not sure how they got this ship, but it was a ship that looked like, or it's a remake. And so Iran is doing it, and so is China. They have Iran has the remake of Israel, and they're practicing on hitting it, and China's doing the same thing. So we have two countries that are basically steaming up for something. Uh, will it happen real soon? We don't know. Everybody is William, the thing is a lot of these countries are blaming Joe Biden for all of this. They said he's dropping the sanctions, he's giving people weapons, he's getting in the middle of the war, and then of course NATO. And I got a report on NATO that's real interesting. Um, so is um, what do you think of those? Are we closer if they're doing these kind of drill? They're calling them drills. They're no longer saying these are exercises, and they've made that very clear. These aren't exercises; these are drills. Is there a difference between drills and exercises?
An exercise is where you send people out into the field to do their battles, and then you retrieve them at night, get them away from the battle space so they can rest, so they can be very, very sharp, and then they re-inject them. That's called an exercise. Now, what was the other word they used?
The drill. They said it's a drill, not an
Drill.
exercise.
So drills are part of training in close quarter combat, meaning you have to go around doors, you have to clear rooms, you have to clear wells, you have to clear any hole, anywhere, if there could be an enemy there, so that you can move forward with your war. So that's what they're doing. We do it. They learned it from us. They're copying us, and it's a good way to train.
Now,
it's always better to go to your enemy's land after you've already been there.
Yeah. Now, Israel in return has been shooting some heavy duty missiles now over there. Today they shot quite a few that struck quite a few of their storage facility, military storage facilities, and they're getting more aggressive. But they put out the warning that within days Iran will have a nuke. And so they want to get ahead of the game, and they're ramping up and they're getting ready for this. There's a lot of unrest, but get this, the Iranian people, what's come out of Iran now is the Iranian people are now protesting. and saying that this isn't what they want. And so there's clashes going on, not only in Iran, but then you have all these clashes going on with Jerusalem, with the Palestinians, and not only that, but Hezbollah and Hamas. So what I was getting from my source over in Israel is it just seems like the people not only they just don't want the fighting, they don't want the war because they know they'll be involved. This must be a people night because it's the people standing up for not wanting this, these clashes. Um, they said, but for the last 2 months, they have been trying to give not only the UN and the United States and other places serious warnings that Iran is. Um, Get this. In the article, it said, and not only the article, but what my friend had sent me was they're saying the same thing is China. These aren't exercises, these are drills. And so these are aimed, they said, Iran says that these are drills aimed at sending a message to Israel to prepare for combat. All the threats are internal, uh, and external drills will begin on the 29th of this month. They said, will it be drills or will it be for real? That I can understand, William. I can understand where Israel says they're going to end up in war. I mean, a message like that sent from um, the Iranian regime, um, that's scary. That is really scary. But that was the warning that's been sent.
So Iran has already built and can field 80 long-range missiles
Mm-hmm.
and reach can reach Israel. The problem is to get enough yield in the warhead cap of that missile, to get a big enough shock wave and heat wave and all that stuff to take out most of Israel with one hit. They've been working on this enriched uranium. I think it's 235 for a long time, and they have to get I believe 90% uranium, and they have to collect that stuff as a uranium oxide, and to get pounds of it, and to be able to set it up so that when it detonates, it actually causes a chain reaction in the weapon. All those things are maybes because they don't have even enough enriched uranium to do tests in Iran.
Yeah.
So they're going to get, but they don't care. All right. First of all, they're part of a religious cult there. Okay, the Ayatollah is a religious cult leader. They don't have to be rational. They don't have to be forgiving. They just are what they are, and there's no reasoning with them. The only way to change their mind is they actually have to be put in a prison cell and then ask enough questions until they cause their mind to turn on their own mind, and they finally figure out that they've been wrong all along.
I don't even think matches under the toenails torture would work for them. Well, I don't know if they do that. I've seen that on some spy movie, but that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, that doesn't work. It's asking questions about their family, their background, their stuff like that, their reasoning. Eventually, you'll get to the very core of why they're doing what they're doing, and then their argument is going to break down because there's no reason and rational reason to kill your fellow man.
Yeah.
But when they're still as a group, they do groupthink, and it's called group psychology. And you know, as a group, they'll do things they would never do on their own. They lose their mind.
Yeah. Now, I'm going to move over to Mexico. They have found a tunnel and they've been able to shut it down, but the massive amount of drugs, and I forgot to send that to you, William, but it's a very deep tunnel. It's like 90 feet deep, and then it goes into the tunnel. And what they're claiming is not only are they moving drugs that way into the United States, all kinds of drugs. It's cocaine, it's marijuana, it's fentanyl, but they're also moving unsavory characters, they say, through these tunnels. So I guess they found a way to move a lot of people that have been committed crimes in the past through these tunnels to get to the other side. I can only imagine maybe this is they're paying with drugs, but they say they don't know. They just have discovered it. Border Patrol discovered it, and they have brought in the military and proper feds and authorities in to um, uh, look at confiscate everything in these tunnels. Um, um, they said they've got, okay, here's what they got. 1,700 pounds of cocaine, 164 pounds of meth, 3 pounds of heroin, and 2,000 pounds of marijuana. Um, they say that it is um, there. They say there is a rail system in it, perfectly put in place ventilation. Um, the structure it's structured very very well. Um, it's linked Tijuana to a warehouse near San Diego Otay Mesa border, and it's 1/3 of a mile long. And like I said, it's got a railway in it. That's what the article says. And they say they spotted a tunnel opening carved into a cement floor. And so they figured they knew this was a narco tunnel. But what they didn't know is the people they were moving through these tunnel. They did arrest um, 9 people, and Homeland Security has got a hold of them, and they said that basically um, that they have been noticing weird trafficking of around this area since the beginning of January 2020, but they never could find anything going on. But they said around Tijuana now, they've been getting reports that there's these underground tunnels and that there's a railway system in it and even an elevator. So the people in Tijuana knew about this. Now, the problem is it was reported to the Department of Justice. And according to Tijuana officials, uh, they just didn't seem interested in it. So they hooked up with Border Patrol and Mexican military and decided they were going to hunt this down. And they did. So now they have got a hold of um, all the drugs that's in there. Now they got control of the tunnel, and they said this is one of 50 that they have found along the border. One of the guys kind of laughed a little bit and said, "Well, this is one of many." But it's got a ventilation pipe in it. It's got looks like almost hardened, treated. Uh, um, I don't want to say floors. It's not floors. It's not cement. It's dirt. Um, I wonder if I could. No, I can't get it up here on this other screen. People, I'm gonna. Um, I'll get pictures tomorrow on tomorrow's show. I'll show what this thing looks like. I'll redo this so you guys can take a look at this, because this is a lot of what they're finding in these tunnels with proper railway systems. They can get through there quicker. Did they find carts? I don't know. They didn't show anything like a cart or what they're using the rail for. But you can, with there, it's easier for them to get that little bit of a mile. Um, but it's well constructed. You could tell it's been there for a while. So um, anyway, um, did you want? I'm going to go on to this other one with NATO because William, I
I'd
think.
like to say something about
Okay,
it.
go ahead.
So China is doing a soft invasion of the United States through, TikTok, in the special Chinese classes in the universities, inviting politicians to come over free to China. So we've been the subject of a soft invasion from China. Well, over in Europe, all right, from Belgium there and Luxembourg, where Mr. What is the guy's name?
Which one?
The one that's over the top of Schwab. So he's doing a soft invasion through Soros.
Klaus Schwab and Soros, yeah. And then Klaus Schwab has a partner now. And I can't remember his name. He stays very quiet.
So Europe is basically a frenemy to us right now because of Klaus Schwab. Otherwise, it wouldn't be. And we're going to have other frenemies, which is China in the South China Sea. And we're letting them all invade the United States because we want to make profits. But if we don't stop it, we'll lose our country.
Yeah.
And between the two of them, they're going to war.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to war in Central Asia, and they're going to war right here in North America.
I think that's
get caught in the middle, just like Ukraine.
There was an article that this come out of the BBC, and not only that, but there's reporters over in basically around the world. I'm even starting to see this in Australia, where some are questioning, is NATO harmful? And I knew I had an article from a while back about Trump, why Trump was against NATO. And I did a show on it, and I was able to grab it back. And it really goes into what's actually going on over what goes on with NATO and why NATO is NATO. And William, I think you're going to think this is interesting and have a lot to say. And I got to read it in whole so everybody really understands. So it says the prospective of joining Sweden and Finland to NATO is all but inevitable because the actions by the United States have started an abominable effect in the Baltic region and in larger Europe. And I think we have to contextualize history when we talk about what is happening in Russia-Ukraine conflict in 1990. Now, James Baker back then, the U.S. Secretary of State, committed to Gorbachev that the United States will not expand NATO or eastward, and that the commitment that the promise was not kept as we know it right now with NATO. And they have slowly expanded and gradually eastward towards Russia. All major stakeholders, including the time in the United States, acknowledged that they conceded that Russia had legitimate security and interests and concerns with the prospective enlargement of NATO. In any case, NATO's relevance um, was with the original Cold War, which ended after the breakup of the Soviet Union. And NATO was used during that time by both sides for their own interests and against each other, the two blocks of original Cold War. So the relevance of NATO, a post a post-war world, self-diminished. But we see that NATO is being revived, enlarged, and strengthened for interests that are beyond the North Atlantic region, as we know. So NATO is an organization of countries which is within the Northern Atlantic. However, if you look at um, um, their idea for 2030, the plan of NATO, which is unveiled recently, uh, and this was a year ago that I this is dated a year ago. So NATO in 2030, as it's called, the two major challenges that it lists uh, are number one, Russia, number two, China. That strikes me as strange and intriguing that in 2019. So I found there's these. This is two different articles. One is for what's going on now, and one that was going on when uh, Trump didn't want NATO in there. So it's very intriguing because China is not North Atlantic. It's in Asia. So why is China being challenged all for the last few years as an adversary for NATO for countries which are not Atlantic? So we see the Cold War mentally is being, they say, proliferated, transcended, enlarged into Europe by using NATO to reorient NATO's purpose and NATO's utility. NATO's target is the target that is now shifting and becoming synonymous and shared with that of the United States of America, which we think is a cause um, for 2019. So now, this other article that runs real close to this, they say, so now we're in 2022 and structural long term instability for Europe. And what we have seen in the Middle East invasions of Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, where the social fabric of society and standard of living in conflict has been destroyed, the whole region. Unfortunately, we see the same mistakes, the same mentality of zero sum game now being applied in Europe. Uh, and and the ambassador of the United States to Russia, George Kennedy, was the ambassador during the Cold War. And Russia was the author of the famous Long Telegram, which has become a reference point in international relations. And the article that was wrote was in 1997, New York Times. It's called A Fateful Error. And the article, A Fateful Error, uh, he said that the single largest fateful error by the United States post Cold War would be expanding of NATO. And it seems that the fateful error is being made again, and that the error is being accelerated. And and this article was in 1997 New York Times. And it would have far reaching long term consequences, not only for other countries involved, but for the United States itself, would be a single largest fatal error after the Cold War to commit. But it was also another warning that by Reagan saying the same thing. And that the individual that this atmosphere of insecurity that led countries that were previously not aligned, like Sweden or Finland, now want to join NATO. And that they feel that this is a big mistake. This is an error that they were, that these countries in Europe were warned about by this fatal mistake that they could be making. A conflict larger that's been ever seen in Russia-Ukraine confrontation, but larger context. The U.S. containment of Russia as well as China is now seen and is being played out in other countries. And it has to stop unless the world is prepared for more conflict as a post-endemic world war plays out. I think human security preventing further pandemics and the health infrastructure um, and the people willing should be collectively priority in the world, not NATO. And it should be up to the individual countries if they want war, not for NATO to move in and pit one country against another. What do you think of that, William?
So, when the Soviet Union disintegrated, we had really dangerous weapons all over. We had an arsenal without a country, and we had to go in and take custody of all those nukes until somebody could be set up that has the capacity to care for them and also control them in a wise way, and how they might deploy them or not deploy them, whatever. And, when that happened, we had to come in and actually feed a lot of these nations.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot in Europe that's not NATO.
Mm-hmm.
But if the UN disintegrates like the Soviet Union does, NATO wants to be able to move in to the new UN and be the new UN, and that'll be the start of the one world government.
Mm-hmm.
Or China taking in all the Pacific to try to move in the United Nations and be, the emperor of the world,
Mm-hmm.
and play these games that are happening in Russia and Ukraine all over the world. And
Now,
we would get caught in the middle.
you know what struck me odd about the article is it mentioned at least twice that NATO pits one country against another. Have you noticed that?
Let me tell you what pits a country against another. What really makes this stuff happen, all right?
Yeah.
It's corporate ESG, and it's medical and social CRT, all right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's how they get in. That's how they pit these other countries against each other, because where ESG and CRT is being planted, they're also making people live better, so that they'll let in things like the World Health Organization have powers in their country, and they'll start to build back better plan and get more money for whatever they're dreaming up today,
Yeah.
for social reasons.
And the thing about it is a lot of these countries are now saying that um, the United States is part of refueling NATO to expand. And
So there's three power centers in the world that Western nations see. So the spiritual power is the seat at the Vatican.
mm-hmm.
The banking power is in the city of London, in London, England. And United States is their big stick through NATO.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because see, Trump pulled this out. And
Right.
he didn't want no part of it. He really didn't even want to be a part of the UN either. And now we have the Biden administration uh, making the decision to push back in, and all we are seeing is war now. And then they're talking about going over and doing Indo Pacific over there. Now we got enough problems with China wanting to be at war anyway over there. We don't really need NATO and Indo-Pacific pushing the Taiwan war on us. And that's what I feel because, when I heard they're going to go over there and they're going to get uh, the countries over there in the Indo-Pacific to join NATO and start increasing NATO there, I'm not keen on that. But I'm afraid under this administration, they'll agree to it.
They're engaged in a derivation of the United States war in the Pacific and in Europe. This
Yeah.
is
So,
just an inverted way of doing it, but they're doing it the same way. They're island hopping.
uh
They're or there's like an invasion where you have to take all your weapons and give it to the people on the front, do the logistics for them. This is just an extension of World War II.
yeah,
China
it sounds
got
like it to
together
me.
and with the United States, and they kicked Japan out of China, and China loved the United States then. But as soon as the war was over, then the two parts of China, the Democratic part and Mao's part, they just went back to war. Well, when Mao died, they're still at war.
Mhm.
They're still at war, and they're just reliving World War II, and they feel like they'll come out on top, and the Europeans feel like they'll come out on top.
You know,
And
you really make a really good point, William. Because now check this out. We were World War II. It was basically Germany. Now this time it's Germany's involved and Europe is too. And now we're having this stuff over. And this time it's not Japan, but it's China. It sounds like the same exact scenario, doesn't it?
yeah, it's just inverse. It's instead of us invading the South China Sea so that we could defeat Japan, these guys are doing it so they can be communists and they can just surround Japan.
Mm.
That's their idea.
Yeah.
So
And this is World War. It is a world war with everything that's. I mean, we have got uh, the tensions really bad over in Indo-Pacific and China, and even um, Alaska is getting kind of fearful for all the ships up there from Russia, and Russia saying, "Oh, we're going to take the those islands," and then it moves over to even Somalia. Now we sent troops, boots on the ground in Somalia, so there we go. We're going into Africa now. And, we have Australia at fear that it's being taken over by China and their next target. They're the next target, all the way to Europe and Ukraine and Russia, and then Israel, Saudi with the Houthis. This is World War. It's almost like this whole the globe is just surrounded in war, war, war. And then we get that UN guy that comes out today that's like, warning, warning, we're all gonna, he's kind of like Bernie Sanders. Um, Warning, warning, we are gonna go up another degree and the ice caps are melting and we have to quit all the oil by September. What? And I'm like, okay, show us the proof. Nothing. They're not going to show nothing. And it's like not only is NATO pushing us to war, but then we got Klaus Schwab and his guys trying to push us into ending everything. Well, and Biden's whole thing is ride a bike. No, you can't just ride a bike on the freeway. Good Lord. But this is World War, William, and this is very troubling times for the world all around. We don't have bombs dropping on our head, but this country is in fear of what
So,
could happen.
so NATO was designed to be a defensive uh, alliance
Hmm.
to keep Soviet Union at bay. Well, since then, they decided they wanted to do something, and they decided it's going to be a defensive weapon, meaning they're going to deploy as far as they can into Eastern Europe or into China or the Middle East, as far as they can. They're going to deploy themselves, and they're going to use defensive tactics to make sure that they're not kicked out of these places.
Yeah.
And what happens is these nations are letting this happen because when our economic system and our corporations move in, that produces lots of jobs, and they start producing jobs as well. And they break that whole zero-sum game bubble, and that way banking gets in through CRT and ESG, and then NATO's the big fist, and because we're the biggest fist in NATO, that means, like the senator said, I think yesterday or 2 days ago on the Senate floor, he said we're at war.
Hmm.
So Congress has identified it now. Now the president has 90 days to come up with a declaration of war out of
Hmm.
in Congress, because only Congress can send us to war. That's power
Hmm.
delegated to them.
Yeah.
The president's delegation is to fight the war. He
Yeah.
becomes the commander in chief.
But the good thing is what I'm seeing around the world is protests after protests. Like, look at Iran; their people are protesting. Over in China, they're protesting against all of this. Um, Even in our own country, you're not hearing about it, but there are places in New York and D.C. and I'm thinking Georgia, that there's protests saying that they don't want us in the middle of this Ukrainian war. There's protests in Ukraine against for peace. This, according to, I think it was CBS News that had the report, and I clicked on it real quick because only like 40 seconds, and they said this is the first time that we are seeing this many protests for no war, peace, and let's work on peace in history. So Australia's even they have protests there. Um, so this is the first time in history this many countries, and this is with all of us in wrapped around in a wartime, that the people are standing up and saying, no, we don't want this. We, we need new leaders. Uh, so, and it's being recognized. And what's really odd is that we're now starting to see our own media starting to put things out like this. I mean, I was shocked, when I seen that it was CBS, and it was like, thank God, like what Mary is saying. That I think that's what she's saying in chat is, thank God that the people are starting to rise up. And not only that, but now we're seeing the smaller countries over around Ukraine, like Hungary and a few others, that say, no, we didn't, no. Let's start backing off. And even going against Finland and Sweden, even joining NATO. So I think that's why we're at a stalemate over there. I think with all the people saying no, 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 and countries starting to change their mind, I think everybody's kind of backed off a little bit because when I looked at the news this morning, I was like, wow, how come everybody's all quiet on the war? It couldn't be YouTube going after everybody for talking about it. Um, And I started going to the different sites, NBC and ABC and CBS, and not CNN or MSNBC, not that crowd. Um, but it was the main networks. They're now saying maybe we don't want this. I'm hearing it in the reporters, and that's something new. That's a change. And then we're seeing it in Israel. We're seeing it all over the world, where the media and the people are now saying, "Wait, now let's not get so hasty." Maybe it just sunk in about the nuclears. That this could be a huge nuclear war, and people are saying, no, we don't need our government making this decision. This is our world. There's very little of the leaders, and there's a whole bunch of us. And I think it's just getting to where they want to. I think it's pushing the leaders into world peace, or at least negotiations. And that's good news. William, do you have any last words before we close for the night? This was a good show, I think.
Yeah, we have a problem right now that there's a bill they're trying to pass that gives the WHO, the WHO, World Health Organization, through the United Nations, the powers to arrest people
Mm-hmm.
in case of another pandemic. And so, they could come and nail you in your house, and it would be okay because Congress gave that power up to NATO, or I mean to the United Nations,
Mm-hmm.
World Health Organization. So that's one of the things they're trying to do right now. Is this is a soft invasion, and they'll use any tool they can, and you'll hear code words that's always in their speeches, like one of the code words is stakeholders. Well,
Mm-hmm.
stakeholders.
I mentioned the stakeholders on Friday's show, Friday night, about the stakeholders. Yeah.
Yeah, and the other one is this green thing. Build back better. Well, to build back better, you have to wipe something out first.
They want to take it to nothing. And,
You
and
have you have to listen to their words.
and not only that, but the thing is, William, is when you ask, like the UN, or even the World Economic Forum, when you ask them, so what's the plan when you get to the bottom? They don't know. That's what's scary. They have no
The World
plan.
Economic Forum is the one that set up. Uh, what is it? What's the name that we use? Oh, I hate it when this happens. So the 2030 agenda.
Mm-hmm.
That's all driven by
Fear.
what's in Europe, yeah. And
Fear
so
of the elites.
that's
Yeah.
where that comes from, and they're using.
I think they're pushing this whole the world is going, the sky is falling, and the world's going to end, and the climate, and we're going to drown, and we're going to. I think it's because William. I think they're losing ground. I think the people have woken up to where they're seeing what Klaus Schwab and them are trying to do, and it's like no way, no way. And I think they're getting worried, and they're like, "Oh, the sky's falling tomorrow. The world's going to end. It's warming up, and oh, we have to push the reset. We have to push the reset now within a few years, not in 2050." Uh, I mean, how do we go from 2050 to the next few years if they're not freaking out? And not only that, but the same with the Democrat Party. They're just all freaked, trying to push as much as fast as they can.
Well, it's part of their religion. You have to keep that in mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a
this CRT ESG stakeholders Agenda 2021, Agenda 2030.
Yeah.
This,
Well, it started
this,
Agenda 21.
right, we know about Agenda 21. Well, 2030 is just finishing the job.
Well, you know what
They're
the
not
original
rational.
20 the Agenda 21 was. That was one of the first like really important G summits, and they were saying that basically they would have um, the one world order by 2021. So
Yeah, Hillary was supposed to come in and hand the United States over.
yeah.
It was and they call it a fait accompli,
Mm-hmm.
meaning they can't lose. Just like China's got a fait accompli in the South Pacific if they keep going. And
So
that's who's in power. So they don't want to, make their own nuclear weapons and stuff in Europe. They can just have ours, or they can
that's
just
right.
have Putin's, or they can just have China's, whoever, or Pakistan's, or India's, or whoever possesses one. They
Yeah.
just want it. They wanted you to give it to them based on medical, the power of medicine, and through the power of corporations. So they keep corporations together through ESG, and also making social scoring all of this. So right now I'm killing my social score. And if you go on, if I go on the internet, I can type my name in, I can type the city of my birth and my age, and my current social score will come up right now.
Wow. I didn't know you could do that yet. Mine's probably
Yep.
0. No, mine's probably like a -666 or something. They're doing a little hex on me. Uh, I think I upset a lot of people sometimes. Um, but William, this is, I really think that uh, I think there's a stoppage due to the people rising up all over. Uh, I'm seeing
We
more
have
and more as we get closer and closer to um, this election in November. We're going through the primaries, and the more I see the Democrats freaking out, the federal government's freaking out. We got Fauci even getting nervous. We got NATO getting nervous. All of these people that've been wanting this one world order are now speaking of, we have to hurry. We have to hurry. We got to get this done. We got to get it done. The sky is falling. That the California's gonna sink and or fall off in the ocean, and there ain't going to be an East Coast, and the hurricanes and tornadoes are going to be worse. Um, I see a panic with these guys now. It used to be they were strong, they were bold, they were uh, we're gonna do this. Now I'm seeing Chicken Little, the sky is falling out of these people, and it just this week, it, you know. Um, so that's really my last word is the rise of the people. I think from a world perspective is now woke up to not only what NATO wants to do, but the World Health Organization, the UN, and I think they're just fed up. I think they're fed up all over.
Well, so they developed this computer. IBM did. His mom worked for IBM. Bill Gates got a job to find a new operating system. So he went out looking for one. He didn't actually create it. He just bought one. So what I wanted to tell you is the information revolution that's going on right now is backfiring on the leadership. They wanted to use it so that they could have a virtual reality and they could be in the virtual reality before they die. They want to be maintained forever in virtual.
Isn't that transhumanism? Is that transhumanism?
Yeah.
That's spoken by Steve Quayle?
Transhumanism.
Yeah.
Right. So they want to put a chip in our head and transfer all the information to the virtual reality supercomputer, and they'll live within the supercomputing of whatever was created. So what they're saying is all the world that we see right now, touch, feel, is part of the simulation. And if that's the case, we want our own simulation, so we don't have to go deal with this whole Christianity and God thing or Allah thing or whatever. They just want to get in before they expire.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why people are so rabid and occult,
Mm-hmm.
because if they don't get control of the world's computer systems before the great awakening that's happening on those computer systems, like this program we're having tonight, then the force of history will be against them, and
Mm-hmm.
they're terrified of that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why they're pushing it so hard, so fast. Is they have to do it before we awaken. That's what they're worried
Mm-hmm.
about, is us awakening.
And they're waking up.
Those of us who have done some awakening are going to be massive targets for them, and they can't accept anything else, because they can't have this machine, this global internet, blow up in their face. That's supposed to be for them and not for us.
Yeah. Well, if Soros gets one of the machines, when he's fixing to die, and he gets hooked up to one of these machines, me and Mary, we're going to go put some water on it. We're going to get a couple spray bottles and go get him. Right, Mary?
That's why they have to depopulate the world and reduce.
Because people like me and Mary will go get them with water.
They want to reduce how intelligent people are, so that they're just they're handy, but they're not going to make any big questions and maintain their machines. So that's what they want. Is they want a very small population to maintain their internet for their virtual reality, but beyond that, they have no use for man.
Yeah. Well, I think that's it for the night, and I hope
what about the music of a song of the week?
Okay.
So there was a concert where Pink Floyd did a concert in Pompeii at the amphitheater there, and it was just called the Pompeii. Anyway, this gal, she's from Brazil. She's part of a group that her mother put together. Mom's the drummer in the group. They're called the Iron Ladies, because they do. They're a cover band of Iron Maiden, but they do it in Portuguese. Anyway, this gal did a cover of the Pulse "Comfortably Numb," and it's an instrumental, and it's better than David Gilmour did it. She has extreme talent, and she's just one of the global talents that have erupted through the internet.
Mm-hmm. And me and
I think you really like it. It's something to kind of soothe you after all this terror we've discussed.
Yeah. That's something that I had on on our first channel before it got taken, is I had a a playlist of music that people could go and listen to that for comfort or just really good uh, selections. And we're going to do it again on this one. So his will be Williams will be the first, and it'll be this music that he's talking about. So I'm going to try to get everything piled on the show page tomorrow, since I only have a morning show. So I'm going to start putting it together, and we'll have that song he's talking about posted in the playlist for music.
If you want.
Huh?
Just you can find it on YouTube tonight if you want. Just type in Jessica DDI Falchi Falchi and Pulse, which is the name of the concert grounds that they did that in Pompeii. And she'll come right up, and you can listen to it for 6 minutes, and then later on, if somebody in YouTube wants to link to it, you can do it through Elly.
Mm-hmm.
But I just want to do a song of the week, and the song of the week is from William, Comfortably Numb.
I thought about, I racked my brain. Maybe I could come up with something, but I couldn't really, nothing really come up. And usually I got stuff that comes to me really quick. So it must not be ready to happen until I get this playlist together. And so it'll be a music type list. And right now we don't have any playlist. So tomorrow we're going to start posting things and start getting this channel a rolling and get some stuff on there for you guys. And I'm going to try to stick with the way it was on the first one where, sometimes there might even be a concert that William liked or I liked or even Karen or Mary. I'm going to include our moderators in this too. If something comes to them that's inspirational or they just really want everyone to hear. I did post some music over on Facebook, so you Facebook watchers, I did do Kid Rock, Born Free. I love that song. And then there was another one I did. It's like a national anthem. And Madison Rising. There you go.
Lee Greenwood.
No, it was no. Now the free Born Free, I believe, is the one with Kid Rock. And the one with Madison Rising is a type of national anthem. It's kind of a rocky version, but it's really good. So
that's great.
So maybe I'll even add those to the list because they're really good pro-patriot songs. For me being an old gal, I still like that little bit of rock and roll. So, all right, William, I think that's it for tonight. We've gone pretty long tonight. I think longer than last week. A lot of info. So I thank you, William, for co-hosting tonight. I'm really liking this, and it's a very popular show. I'm not sure if everybody was having issues. It seems like people are popping in and out on this, so who knows? Hopefully, we don't get in no trouble tonight. So subscribe and hit the bell if you're over here on YouTube, and follow and hit that like button over there in Facebook land. And of course, we're gaining more and more people. And actually, we had quite a few ads on the YouTube today. I'm not sure if it's people finding us or if it's actually new people. So with that, William, have a wonderful night yourself. And also, Mary, thank you for moderating tonight. And thank everyone for watching tonight. Hopefully, between this morning show and tonight, you might go back and watch them and let this kind of sink in a little bit of what's going on. We give a lot of in detailed, very um, what would you call it, William? We get them thinking. We get them thinking hard.
Yeah, we give detailed information, and we give them so much information. You have to, the words we use,
process it.
Tell an extra story. It's almost impossible for us to move the information through in an hour because it's so intense. It's like for us, it's like trying to drink out of a fire hose and then share it with our neighbors. It's really difficult, but every word means something. Don't let the speed of it going by get lost. Go back and listen to it a little bit, and then think about it, and listen to it a little bit, and think about it. Our words are chosen very carefully.
Okay, folks.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Oh, of course, and we'll have you back next week or maybe sooner. Who knows? If things happen, William will be right back in here with me. So we want to thank everyone for watching, and God bless everyone, and prayers for the people around the globe, for the people, because we all need this right now, to know that we're gonna rise, and that people around the globe are rising with us, and saying we've had enough. We've had enough. So with that, everyone, we will see you in the morning for the news, and probably just news in the morning. Have a lot of stuff coming up on my phone and on my computer. So I've already got probably half a show. Prayers for everyone and blessings to our watchers and their families, and to keep us all safe. Good night, folks.